Hey everybody, Steve here. When you think about strong wood, what comes to mind? Probably a big thick slab of oak or maple, right? We all think solid wood is the undisputed champion of strength, but here's a little secret that might surprise you. In some situations, a sheet of high-quality plywood is actually stronger than a solid wood board of the same size. I know, it sounds crazy. We've been taught that solid is always better, but the way plywood is made gives it some unique superpowers that solid wood just doesn't have. It challenges our whole idea of what makes a piece of wood tough. This isn't to say your solid oak dining table is going to collapse, far from it, but it shows that the world of woodworking is more interesting than we often think. The real strength of a material isn't just about how much weight it can hold before it breaks, it's also about how it handles stress from different directions. A solid wood board is incredibly strong along its grain. But try to bend it or stress it across the grain and it's a completely different story. It can split and crack much more easily. This is where plywood flips the script and shows its true advantage. The secret lies in its construction, which we'll get into. Plywood is like a wood sandwich, with each layer turned a different way. This simple trick evens out the strength, making the entire sheet strong in every direction. It doesn't have a weak across the grain direction like solid wood does. So when you're building something that needs to resist twisting or bending forces like a big cabinet box or a subfloor, that engineered sheet of plywood might just be the heavyweight champion you didn't expect. It's a great example of how a little bit of clever engineering can improve on nature. So the next time you're in the lumber aisle, don't automatically dismiss plywood as the weaker cousin. It's a strong contender with its own set of skills. The choice between plywood and solid wood isn't always about which one is tougher overall. It's about understanding their different kinds of strength and picking the right one for the job you have in mind. Is one truly better than the other for longevity? Well, that's what we're here to figure out. Let's dig a little deeper into how these two materials are made and what makes them tick. So, what exactly is plywood? It isn't just a bunch of wood scraps glued together, it's actually a pretty clever piece of engineering. Imagine a log being put on a giant lathe and peeled into a very long, thin sheet of wood. This sheet is called a veneer. To make plywood, you take several of these veneers, which are called plies, and you stack them on top of each other like a stack of pancakes. The real magic happens in how they are stacked. Each layer's grain is turned 90 degrees to the layer below it. This is called cross-graining. This cross-graining technique is the key to plywood's stability. Think about a single board of solid wood. It wants to expand and contract across its width, but not so much along its length. By alternating the direction of the grain, each layer of plywood helps to hold the other layers in place. One layer wants to expand sideways, but the layer above it is strong lengthwise, so it stops it from moving. This creates a constant, gentle tug-of-war inside the sheet that makes the whole thing incredibly stable. It's much less likely to warp, twist, or cup than a solid wood board. After stacking the veneers, they are put into a giant, hot press with powerful glue between each layer. The combination of heat and immense pressure fuses the layers together into a single, strong, and rigid sheet. That's why you can get plywood in big, perfectly flat sheets of 4 by 8 feet, or even larger. Trying to find a solid piece of wood that big, that flat, and that stable would be nearly impossible, not to mention incredibly expensive. This process gives us a reliable and predictable material to work with for our projects. This stability is plywood's #1 feature. When you are building something large, like the sides of a cabinet, a bookshelf, or a big desktop, you want it to stay flat. You don't want to come into your workshop one day and find your project has warped itself into a potato chip shape just because the humidity changed. Plywood resists this kind of movement, making it a fantastic choice for large panels. It's a man-made solution to one of nature's little quirks, and for woodworkers, that's a huge win. Now let's talk about good old-fashioned solid wood. This is the stuff that comes straight from the tree. A log is sawn into boards, dried, and then milled into the lumber we buy. There are no glues, no layers, just pure natural wood. And that's its biggest appeal. The grain patterns, the colors, and the texture are all unique. Every board of walnut or cherry tells the story of the tree it came from. You can't replicate that beauty with a man-made product. It has a warmth and a character that woodworkers and homeowners have loved for centuries. However, that natural quality comes with a catch. Solid wood is what we call hygroscopic, which is a fancy way of saying it acts like a sponge. It absorbs moisture from the air when it's humid and releases it when the air is dry. This process makes the wood cells swell and shrink, and here's the important part. Wood moves almost entirely across the grain, not along its length. A long board will stay pretty much the same length year-round, but its width can change noticeably. This movement is a powerful, unstoppable force of nature. This constant expansion and contraction is what can lead to problems like warping, cupping, and twisting. If you have a wide, solid wood panel like a tabletop, and you don't account for this movement, it can destroy itself. The wood swells, and if its path is blocked, it will bend or cup to relieve the stress. This is why traditional furniture makers use techniques like breadboard ends or frame and panel construction. These methods are designed to let the wood panel float and move freely with the seasons without breaking the furniture apart. So, while solid wood is incredibly beautiful, it's also a bit moody. It reacts to its environment. You have to understand and respect its nature to work with it successfully. You can't just screw a wide tabletop down to its base and expect it to stay flat. It needs room to breathe. This is a fundamental difference between solid wood and plywood. Plywood is designed to be stable and resist movement, while solid wood requires you to design your project around its natural tendency to move. It's not a flaw, just a characteristic you have to plan for. So we've established that plywood is super stable, and solid wood can be a bit of a drama queen. But what about pure, brute strength? When it comes to bearing a load, solid wood usually takes the prize. Think about the legs of a heavy table or the frame of a house. These parts need to resist compression and bending forces along their length. A solid piece of wood is perfect for this. Its long, continuous fibers make it incredibly stiff and strong along the grain. You wouldn't want to build the frame of a workbench out of plywood. Solid wood posts are the way to go. Plywood's strength, on the other hand, is more uniform. It's strong in all directions, but it's not as stiff as solid wood over a long span. If you use a thin piece of plywood for a long shelf, it will likely sag over time under its own weight, a problem called creep. You can solve this by adding a solid wood edge or support underneath, but on its own, it can't match the load-bearing capacity of a solid beam. This is a classic trade-off. Plywood gives you dimensional stability, while solid wood gives you superior stiffness and load-bearing strength. This is why you see them used together so often in projects. Consider a kitchen cabinet. The big flat box is usually made from plywood. Why? Because you need it to stay square and not warp over time, which would make the doors and drawers stick. The stability of plywood is perfect for the cabinet carcass, but the face frame, the part on the front that the doors hang on, is often made from solid wood. The frame needs to be strong and durable to hold screws and withstand the daily abuse of opening and closing doors. The same logic applies to a table. The legs and the apron, the frame that sits just under the top, are best made from solid wood. They need to be strong enough to support the weight of the top and whatever you put on it. But the large, flat tabletop itself can be a great place for high-quality plywood, especially if you plan to cover it with a veneer. It will stay perfectly flat for years, while a solid wood top might want to cup or warp. It's all about choosing the right player for the right position on the team. When we talk about which material lasts longer, moisture is the #1 enemy for both. Let's start with plywood. If water gets into the edges or a scratch on the surface, it can seep between the layers of veneer. This can cause the glue to fail, and the layers will start to separate or delaminate. It looks like the wood is puffing up and peeling apart. Once this happens, it's almost impossible to fix properly. The key to making plywood last is to seal it completely with a good finish like paint, polyurethane, or lacquer, paying special attention to the edges where the layers are exposed. Solid wood handles moisture differently. It doesn't delaminate, but it can have its own problems. If one side of a board gets wet, it will swell more than the other side, causing it to cup or warp. If the wood gets soaked and then dries out too quickly, it can crack and split as it shrinks. However, the damage is often more repairable. A small crack can be filled, and a warped board can sometimes be flattened again. Solid wood is also more forgiving of dings and scratches. You can simply sand them out, and the wood underneath will look just as good as new. When it comes to longevity, both materials can last for generations if they are used correctly and cared for. Think of antique solid wood furniture that is hundreds of years old. It has survived because it was well made and kept in a stable environment. Similarly, high-quality plywood, like Baltic birch, used in mid-century modern furniture from the 1950s and 60s, still looks fantastic today. The key was a good design and a durable finish that protected it from moisture. Longevity is less about the material itself and more about how it's used and protected from its weaknesses. So, what's the final word? There is no single winner. The choice depends entirely on your project. If you are building cabinet boxes, drawer bottoms, or a large stable panel that needs to stay flat, plywood is your best friend. But if you need strong legs for a table, a sturdy frame for a door, or a beautiful surface that you might want to refinish someday, solid wood is the classic choice. Both materials are fantastic, and knowing their strengths and weaknesses is what makes you a better woodworker. So for your next project, think about the job each part has to do, and choose your material wisely. You can't go wrong.